wisdom. And wisdom is one of the four pillars of Stoicism. It's wisdom, courage, justice, which basically is treating everybody fairly and kindly, and temperance or moderation, knowing, that many things will not last, for sure, that's one of the things, but also managing yourself. And so to be stoic is really to be wise, and wisdom is what we'll be talking on today. Now, Stoicism has inside it this very interesting binary system. It asks you to be extremely responsible, but only responsible for what you think and what you do. Not for responsible in the sense that if the world falls apart, you're not supposed to fall with it. You're supposed to continue to use those four virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Right? You continue to act like that if everything is going well, if everything is going poorly, if someone is against you, or if they're for you. You maintain your virtues. And virtue is the pathway to happiness. So most Stoics, rather than wanting to hold the pain in, want to have a peaceful and happy life. And they feel that if they can maintain their attention on what they can control and become more or less, in various degrees, indifferent to everything that they cannot have absolute control over. So if you think about it, they've drawn the circle very tightly around themselves of what their control is, and what they can't control, they become more or less indifferent. So if I say to someone here, and I say, you look good today, and they say, oh, go get out of my face, you go, okay. I was virtuous in the sense I was kind and just, and they can be whatever they are. It's not about me. Or if there's a politician, say anyone in this room can't stand, and they should be pontificating about things that feel offensive to them, and yet it hasn't touched them or their community, then they could be indifferent, as long as we maintain our own virtue, of which, in a case like that, would be to see that the other person could use some awakening to their better nature. But it's not our job to take on anger or frustration and project it out, rather that we should continue with the four virtues of wisdom and justice, to continue to be kind and to be temperate. Now this is, if you can consider that, that's what Stoicism is. Is bringing it into you and continually reminding you there are more ways for you to be good in every situation, and you are not a victim of the world you see around you. The whole issue is not what's happening to you, it's how you are, how you respond to it. And so whether you are winning or losing, whether you're the emperor or the slave, the task is the same. Not to let the world out there change who you are, but instead to develop your virtues, which is essentially what Marcus Aurelius was saying, the soul of you. The soul of you, who is what you're paying attention to, that because in this philosophy, the soul is improved by your acting virtuously. It is fed by that. It is the growth of you. And what really counts is your soul's development, not your egoic development, which would have its preferences of getting or avoiding according to its likes or fears. And so the first order of managing your mind is to recognize you're having a perception. Now most of us, much of the time, believe the thoughts that we have and our impressions. But it could be that we have just put an overlay on it. Or as Epictetus would say, if someone hits you, they have not harmed you until you think they have. Until you say they have harmed you. It is just an act. It doesn't mean anything until you give it value. And so first thing is to notice you have a perception. The next thing is to step back and say, well, it's just a perception. It doesn't mean anything. And then, with a sense of patience, develop your interpretation. All the while knowing you're making an interpretation of what's going on, instead of just reacting. So wisdom is really the ability to pause, to examine, and then to act according to the best possible interpretation you can come up with. And of course, since we're human beings, we will make mistakes. And if we make mistakes, that's in the past. To a Stoic, you don't worry about the past. It can't be changed. It becomes an indifferent. It's outside of your little circle. You can't change it, and therefore you should be indifferent to it. And so you become free in the moment to think and respond to what's in front of you because you're not carrying the guilt of the past, nor are you so far out in the future that you can't be there. And so really the Greeks, in this style of philosophy, were into mindfulness. This moment. Not the past, not the future, now. And when we really get down to what unity is about, it's talking about changing you, not your circumstances. The circumstances change as an manifesting a result of, a reflection of, might be a better way, of your internal state. So if you want to have prosperous things, first you become prosperous inside. Essentially, you change yourself, not the outer world. And the outer world will come along. That's the unity discovery, that if you do become prosperous inside, live from a place of generosity, open your heart and give freely, then the world will echo back to you what you've been doing. I think the Stoics probably experience that, but they don't talk about that so much. What they really talk about is change yourself. You know, the real trick is to develop two perspectives, to be both, or alternately at least, in your ego, your humanness, and also in your soul. To be at the level where things don't change, and also in the level where things do change. In the level where it's personal, and in the level in which you recognize everyone is really you. Then you develop, by having the feeling and the sensation of being a human, and yet coming over here and having the wisdom of the soul, then we learn to live in a compassionate way. Resilience is often thought of as having everything work out in your favor. But it's really when you're confronted by the obstacles and you cease to identify with your preferences. So you cease to identify with, I need it to be this way before I can be happy, or I need to avoid that before I can feel safe. And instead, turn to the deeper aspect of yourself, your soul, by paying attention to the virtues of wisdom and courage, of justice and temperance. By paying attention to those, then you can get in tune with your soul and see from a place where things don't change, where you don't lose, because it's not about those things. It is about your soul. This is the process of soulfully becoming resilient.